The views expressed are solely those of the individuals providing them and do not reflect the opinions of the Team Sock Passe podcasts or their respective affiliates or sponsors.
Sock Passe, what's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Team Sock Passe podcast. My name is Glad. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment this episode when you guys check it out. We have an amazing guest for you guys today. It's going to be an educational podcast, a podcast interview that is long overdue for this platform, but we're happy to have her on, Miss Dr. Garcia. We're going to be talking about mending relationships between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, amongst other things. Doc, welcome.
Que lo que.
Que lo que. Sock Passe. Thank you so much for doing this. I've been following your platform for a few years now, and you just recently made a post, and I was like, oh, let me see if we can connect, see if we can get you on. You responded quick, and here you are.
We are.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure, my privilege. Thank you.
I have a long extended bio here. I'm going to keep it short, though. I highlighted just a little bit. If you guys want to check it out, go to the website, inculturedcompany.com. .org. To check out her bio and the amazing stuff that these guys are doing over there. So here we go. I'm just going to read a snippet of it. Dr. Garcia, a first-generation Dominican immigrant and a multi-passionate researcher and organization builder. She is the director of Incultured Company, where she has served as a volunteer since 2018. Dr. Saudi's life and work weave together public scholarship and anti-racist organizing for social realignment, transforming, and species healing. Wow. Dr. Saudi's work is guided by the desire to create a greater safety, healing, and holistic well-being for all humans, especially Black diasporic people. She is an anthropologist studying how Black people's land and body-based practices disrupt the ongoing harms of racial capitalism and systematic racism. You see where we're going with this podcast today. Dr. Garcia has written about the early years of Incultured Company, the lessons learned from this transnational, transcultural activism, and the potential pathways ahead for Dominicans and Haitians seeking reconciliation and reparations. Wow.
Wow.
Amazing stuff, amazing stuff.
I sound so impressive. When you read it like that, you know.
I think you are, but I mean, I think you are. Your body of work and what you've done within this space, it's, this is an amazing topic, a heavy topic. How did you get here? Because what sticks out to me is anthropology, right? The study of human beings, I believe.
Yeah.
How did you get here? Like, did you say to yourself, I want to get into this?
Yeah.
Tell us your story.
So I started grad school in 2015. I went to NYU for my PhD, and I knew I wanted to study something about the island, something about Dominican history, culture. And at the same time that I was doing my studies, I was also doing a lot of cultural activism among the Dominican York community here in New York City, Uptown, Harlem, Washington Heights, and the Bronx. Mm-hmm. So I was part of a group called We're All Dominican, which is an activist group that was focused on the 2013 sentence that stripped citizenship away from Dominicans of Haitian descent, people who have been born in the DR, who had one Haitian parent. So that's how my journey into activism started. Mm-hmm. So at the same time that I was doing my readings and my theory courses and all of that, I was also on the side doing a lot of events, decolonization events, events where we could talk about these topics to build up the consciousness of the Dominican community around racism, around state racism, around all these topics that we're gonna get into. So that's how it started, and I caught the attention of somebody named Francois, who is the founder of Incultured. France founded Incultured in 2018, and she was looking for somebody to co-teach a 2-hour workshop on Haitian history alongside Dominican history. Because a lot of times it's like Haitian history is over here, Dominican history is over there, but our history has always been interconnected. What was happening in Haiti was influencing what was happening in what would become Dominican Republic. So she needed a co-facilitator, and she found me and took me out to lunch and convinced me to co-facilitate. And that was like the summer of 2018, and the rest is history, as they say.
Wow. So that's a great segue, right? Because what's her name? Francois. She invited you to come and be a part of Encultured. And so take us back to that first decolonizing Hispaniola workshop in 2000. Like, how was that for you?
Oh my God.
Take us back to that.
Oh my God. Okay.
And what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced launching the workshop?
First, it was amazing. We had no money, so we were in the basement and the first floor of an art space here in Brooklyn called New Women's Space, and they were like, yeah, just come and do your thing here. And what I remember from that, first of all, we had a lot of fun because our team was 2 Haitian, 2 Dominicans together, but we vibed so much and became really good friends from that point on. And I just remember being in the basement of this space, facilitating a dialogue between Dominicans and Haitians, and so many light bulbs going off among the Dominicans who were hearing information that totally contradicted what they had been taught to believe. So literally, I'm getting chills thinking about it, like people being like, wait, Haitians didn't enslave Dominicans? Like, I have been told this my entire life. And it totally changed people's perspective. And they were really, some of them like had never had a chance to even have a conversation with a person from the other culture.
Wow.
So from that moment on, I was like, this is community changing, life changing work. We have to find a way to keep doing this, even if we don't have resources. Like, we always just found a way to keep our work going. Like, the next year, our workshop was literally in an urban farm in East New York. And that's where we held our next workshop, literally like in an urban farm.
Wow.
You know, like wherever we could find a space, find a way, we were there, bringing our people together.
What was some of the moments with the attendees? Like, was it an eye-opener for them? Like, describe that moment of them getting all of this information in the workshop.
Yeah, ooh, that's a great question. I mean, there have been so many good moments. I think that the moments of transformation for people happen when we're in those small circles, right? Because we share the historical timeline, which went from an hour to now, we have a 2-day conference. Because there's so much to share, that this summer we have a 2-day conference dedicated to these topics, because there's so much, right? So we do our presentation, and then we give people a chance to engage questions around like, well, why do you think that our history is being taught in this way? Who benefits on both sides, right? Because we're not uncritical of the way that Haiti internally things have happened inside of Haiti. We're not uncritical of that. The group is Dominicans and Haitians, and we have perspectives around the elite in Haiti and the kind of abuse that happens in that space. So hearing people in those small circles have conversations about like a more critical perspective, us asking them questions like, who benefits from the propaganda? What ultimately is the price that we as communities are paying for our lack of access to decolonial education, right? All of those things are meant to be conversation starters for people, because we want them to go out there and get the books, listen to the podcasts, seek out the scholars, do that work, and it's just the beginning.
Got you. So I want to get into, I'm calling this topic anti-Blackness, anti-Haitianism in a sense.
Let's get into it.
What are some of the everyday ways anti-Blackness or anti-Haitianism shows up in the Dominican society, and how are they internalized by Dominicans themselves?
We could be here all day talking about that. But I want to first say that anti-Blackness and anti-Haitianism are a global system. right? Anti-Blackness is not, oh, I have one, me as an individual, I have a particular preference for a person who's lighter skin. Anti-Blackness is a system that's economic, right? It's about how what we prefer aesthetically. It's about who makes more money. It's about what aspects of the culture of certain cultures do we value and put more weight on, right? It's about so many different things, right? Like, anti-Blackness is an entire system, and it has so many different components. And then anti-Haitianism specifically, I think of it as a type of anti-Blackness that's rooted in the fact that Haiti was the first Black republic, the first place where slavery was abolished, and that sent shockwaves around the world, and instantly it created, the world responded by making Haiti a state that was excluded, marginalized, and impoverished, right? We know this.
Yes, absolutely.
So I would say that anti-Haitianism fits within anti-Blackness, but it's also very specific, and it's also really aggressive. And so the ways that this shows up in Dominican communities is so layered. There's so many different ways, right? In the Dominican Republic, there is a hierarchy of skin color. Mm-hmm. There is a hierarchy of skin color that determines what kind of education you're gonna have, what kind of health access you might have, and then you add on top of that the fact that there's also a hierarchy of citizenship, right? So it's an intersection, right? If you are a dark-skinned Black person, but you are, say, from the US and you have citizenship, right? That blue passport gives you a certain privilege. But if you're somebody who's a dark-skinned person who doesn't speak Spanish and also doesn't have a passport, either from the US or the Dominican Republic, you're at this intersection of so many different kinds of harm. And so, I can give you some concrete examples, right?
Please.
Anti-Haitianism in the Dominican Republic is the fact that after 1929, the state brought Black Haitian folks to work in the sugar plantations, right? With the promise that they would get a pension. But to this day, those people who are now elderly in their 70s and 80s don't have their pension. They had to start a whole social movement to try to get these basic needs met, right? Anti-Haitianism in the Dominican Republic is the fact that the majority of care workers are Haitian women or they're dark-skinned Black Dominican women, and they're underpaid and not able to unionize, right? Anti-Haitianism and anti-Blackness, for example, shows up in the fact that in 2013, the Dominican government chose a project that they had been doing since the early 2000s. They intentionally chose to deny citizenship to 250,000 people, leaving their lives in limbo. That means without that ID card, they can't even open a cell phone account or a bank account or buy a home or get married or settle or make sure their children have citizenship, right? So there are all these ways that anti-Haitianism is embedded inside of Dominican society. And on top of that, you got run-of-the-mill anti-Blackness and colorism that impacts Black Dominican, dark-skinned Black Dominican people as well. So we got a really complex situation happening here. Just created this is on our website now. This fact sheet is the fact sheet around Haitian politics 2010 to present day. So everything that happened in Haitian politics to this day, and everything that happened in Dominican migration policies up from 2000 to 2021, every single thing that they did. And from the last 3 years, the security crisis and all the migration and deportation stuff that's been happening.
So you're like a watchdog, in a sense. I mean, look how detailed this information is.
It's really tiny, tiny print.
You said it's on
the website. It's our fact sheet.
Wow,
yeah.
This is amazing.
Because we want people to be informed. We want them to say, look, on this year, this was a court case that did this. In this year, here's a change in migration law that caused harm among people. We're not here to just say things out of our, out of our neck. Like people say, like we got our facts, we research everything really deeply, and we know what we're talking about because we're witnessing it.
We could say who, but let's just say the powers that be. Who are the powers that be? Who are the faces who's making these laws or keeping the status quo or keeping the tensions between, Haiti and DR in a sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So something that people don't know about Dominican Republic is that Dominican Republic is governed by like 10 powerful families that are Spanish descendant families. They're wealthy and they're elite. So they have built up an economy that depends on cheap and semi-enslaved black labor, right? Whether that is the labor that's cutting sugar, right? Because up to 1970, sugar was the major export of Dominican Republic. Sugar built Dominican Republic, right? From the early 1900s until 1970, when sugar prices began to fall, the economy of the DR was built out of sugar. It's not till the 70s that you get like a tourism economy that starts to replace sugar. So you have those families, right? The Vicini family that owns Casa de Campo and La Romana and many other of these like elite spaces. And so there's certain families that benefit from an economy where black people are disposable. And interestingly enough, the Dominican president today is from one of those elite families. His family is in construction and tourism. Right? And so you have this intermingling of business and government in Dominican Republic, and I'm sure it's similar in Haiti.
Right.
That requires black, expendable, cheap labor to function, right? And we can see that, for example, in the construction boom of the Dominican Republic.
Got you.
I can go on. Yeah, so again, let's take, for example, the construction industry. A 2019 study found that Haitians in the Dominican Republic are 9% of the workforce, right? And they make up 30% of the construction industry. One of the biggest booms in the Dominican economy has been the construction industry, building hotels, building more buildings, right, in the urban areas, not just the urban areas, but also a lot of surrounding peri-urban areas of the country. Who has been building those buildings? 30% of the workforce is made up of Haitian workers. Are they paid well, or do they just call, you know, the migration officials when they don't want to pay the workers?
Wow.
So we're talking about unfair labor practices. We're talking about extractive economic practices. That's why when you read my bio, I reference racial capitalism. Racial capitalism is a theory that really presents the ways that race is intermingled with the creation of wealth, right? Capital always needs a way to extract more value out of people and nature than is possible. And creating a racial hierarchy and saying black people at the bottom, this is who we're gonna abuse, creates a way for capital to keep building and reproducing itself.
Right. It's a crazy cycle because it's like those are the next door neighbors, and they're helping, you know, they're helping build the capital of the DR, and then we get treated, you know, then you get treated bad. That's crazy.
It is.
That's crazy.
It is, and it's absolutely about preserving the DR as a more white nation. The Dominican Republic knows that it's not white, but getting as close to white as possible has always been the project. Like, there are literally colonial era, like, documents from like 1844 where the new Dominican government is begging Spain to come to trade and to be a partner in that endeavor. How do you beg the people who colonized you to come back?
Wow.
And eventually they're successful because Spain in 1860 comes back. There's a war that had to be fought between the Spanish and led by black Dominicans and with support of Haitians to liberate Dominican Republic once again from the Spanish colonizer, which happened in 1865. So again, we have this really big disconnect between everyday black Dominican people, which is the majority of the nation, and the elite that has governed from the beginning and continues to govern, right? Through this business government kind of intermeshing.
Wow. How does Dominican national identity been shaped through or demonetization of Haitians and black Dominicans?
Like the demonization?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, you know, have you seen the real like propaganda we're not falling for right now? Okay. So here's some propaganda about Dominican identity that I'm not falling for right now. some propaganda is all Dominicans are mixed. Everybody's mixed with Spanish and with Taino and with Black. That is not true. Some people are just Black. They're just Black Dominican. They're descendants of people who were formerly enslaved, who were liberated by Haitians, and who stayed in their communities, and they're Black, and they've always been Black. There are some people who are mixed. Like, obviously, like, I'm someone who's a mixed race person. So I have grandparents who are both Spanish descendant and also Afro descendant. So there are just a lot of myths around who gets to be Dominican, right? And that prototypical Dominican is someone who looks like me or lighter, but that doesn't include the like many millions of people who are dark-skinned Black Dominican people.
Got you. Right.
You know, so there's like that kind of like on the surface, just like aesthetic thing. Now, because of the actions of the current government deporting people like this, Dominicans, some of them are like deputizing themselves to tell people, oh, you're not Dominican, you're Haitian. Which they use that as an insult. It shouldn't be an insult, but also who allowed you to be the person who gets to decide who is Dominican? Because, you know, a European tourist moves to the DR and learns a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of bachata, and suddenly they're aplatanao. Suddenly they're like part of.
Right.
But a Haitian person who's lived in the Dominican Republic but a person who has Haitian roots but has lived in the Dominican Republic for 50 years or 25 years, suddenly there's a gatekeeping about them being able to belong as well. So why is that's okay, you know?
Wow.
And there's a lot of other things. I think that going down to like why the demonization, again, it goes back to education, right? If you say, let's take like the US example, right? If people in Texas, right, the children are taught that the Mexicans enslaved people who, you know, the people who are of Texas for 20 years in the long past. And they're told over and over again, like, these people enslaved our ancestors, these people enslaved our ancestors, they're bad people, right? Look at what they do, or look at their religious practices, or look at how they do. And that never gets challenged, right? The textbooks that Trujillo wrote when he was a dictator, some of them have never been revised.
Wow.
We're still teaching the same thing, even though the research is excavating very different sources and very different narratives. So that's why we at In Culture are a narrative change organization. What does that mean? That we're taking this knowledge that's being produced in academia, which I'm very familiar with because it's what I studied, is my network, is my circle. It's like, oh, homegirl just wrote an article, homegirl just wrote a book, okay, but let's share that with the community, right? Because that article is behind a $40 paywall. Who in our community's got $40 that can just spare to just read an article? No, let's take that and make it accessible so that a 17-year-old can read that and be like, oh, that's fresh information. That's a contradiction to the narrative. And so that's why we're so passionate about education, but not any kind of education, political education, for our liberation.
Wow. Told y'all this episode was powerful.
But we keep it fun, though, because you never know what you're going to get. You might get a meme or a reel that's funny, or you might get a 5-minute video that's giving you every detail about an analysis that you need to know.
Yeah.
We want to make sure people come for the funny meme, but then they stay for the
education part.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you respond to people who say racism or anti-Blackness isn't bad in Latin America or the Caribbean compared to the U.S.?
People say that? Who says that? That's funny. Sorry, I need a drink of water.
Yeah, that's
that
yours
funny.
right there. Yeah,
that was
please.
funny. Who says that? Oh my God. Have they been to Latin America? Like, so funny. That's hilarious. You know, I don't want to oversimplify too, because like we're always get accused of like, this is like the accusation, like, you people in the U.S., like, you don't know what it's like here. Like, you're bringing your U.S. perspective, which is colonizing like, it's just colonization in reverse. You're just like bringing your narrative on top. And it's like, but did you know that during the occupations of our countries between 1916 and 1922 in DR, and then 1916 to like, I think it was 1936 in Haiti, Did you know that they brought U.S. Marines to institute what was basically Jim Crow practices on our communities? Where they banned drumming in the Dominican Republic, they banned our ancestral religious practices. They told us we couldn't practice our religion in public. That is the kind of colonization that I want to talk about, right? Like, why don't we talk about that more, right? Instead of saying, like, you're bringing this other perspective, like, that's foreign to us. Maybe the racism's been there from the beginning.
Right.
It's just we had different ways of managing that, right?
Yeah.
Like the discrimination, the colorism on both sides, because let's be real here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Has been there from the beginning. Just because we don't call something systemic racism, right? The government isn't like, I'm a systemic racism you right now. I'm gonna discriminate you right now. Just because our government is not saying I'm gonna discriminate you right now, doesn't mean there isn't discrimination happening, right? At the level of the government, right? And at the level of also our families, our communities, because we internalize certain things, right? We internalize the colorism and the anti-Blackness, right?
Yeah.
We also do work at In Culture that's deeper work, that's healing justice work around, okay, we have this information, we're changing these narratives, but how do we actually change our communities?
Yeah.
Because that's the part that's harder, right? Having these difficult conversations with our families, trying to like get to the core issues.
Right.
Because you know, across Latin America, a number has been done in our communities, right? And like, that is so deep, right? There's a scholar named Tania Cateri Hernandez who has this great book and framework called Racial Innocence, right? And that framework really is around the ways that in Latin America, there has been such a hiding of the forms of systemic racism, but they're there, right? Who has the better jobs and who can get the better jobs? What kind of educational access do our children have in these countries, right? The DR is the #2 worst school system in the region, and is not unintentional because our children are predominantly Black children in our public schools. The wealthy send their kids to private school, and then they send their kids to college in Spain or Miami. But our children, our students are not getting a quality education. And so I don't have to say, the government doesn't have to scream systemic racism, but when you look at the outcomes and who the population is, right? The fact that we don't even have data to work with around the outcomes broken down by self-identified race, right? We don't even have that data in DR. And in a lot of other Latin American spaces like Brazil, like at least in Brazil, you got that data. And they were able to make changes socially. But there's a lot of work to do. And I'm not like, these governments are not gonna sit there and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna systemic racism you. But they're gonna do things that are gonna disproportionately impact Black populations.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're right about that. I wanted to kind of fast forward in a sense and talk about like some current events that's kind of happening right now, right? You've got a lot of gang violence happening in Haiti right now, and people are fleeing to the DR to, you know, seek some, they're concerned, and there's a lot of tension between in the borders right now, and they're going there to seek safety, in a sense. And I just wanted to know, like, what's your takes on that, or what have you heard of what's going on with the tensions that's going on right now?
Listen, we got this entire section of our timeline is just the last 3 years. Our toolkit on our website, the last 3 years, every single thing that the Dominican government has done. So let's just start with the fact that in 2021, there were only not only, because any deportation is not great, there were 44,000 deportations, right? And predominantly of Haitians, because that's the migrant population in the DR. There are other migrant groups, but they're smaller groups. And so after the assassination of Jovenel Moïse in July 2021, the response of the Dominican government was to ramp up deportations.
Wow.
Right? the response was to immediately begin creating an apparatus, right, and a legal framework to be able to expel more people into what we know is a crisis situation.
Absolutely.
You know, and if people want to find out, well, how did Haiti get to this point, then look at the first part of the timeline. Because that gives you everything you need to know up until today, up until March of 2025, right? It's a very complicated situation, but what we know is that sending people to Haiti at this moment to be unsafe it can be a death sentence for some people.
Yeah.
Right? And so the humanitarian thing to do, and what the UN chief of refugees said, is to not deport people to Haiti at this moment.
Right.
To not deport people. What is interesting, and that what will surface and what was surfacing in the data that we gathered, is that from year to year, in the kind of migration population surveys that are done in the Dominican Republic, there was a survey done in 2012, there was a survey done in 2017, and there was also one that's supposed to have been done more recently. So in those surveys, the migrant population is between 250,000 people to just under 300,000 people. So anywhere between 5% of the population and 7% of the population. And that's a pretty stable number, right? And so we're waiting for the latest research from that kind of survey that we're trying to figure out, like, was there such a jump in the population that required these extreme measures? Because what we see is a 3-time increase in deportations over 2021 to 2024, which again is not warranted, because do we really know if there are that many more people, right? We don't even have that information that's accurate at the moment about how many more people are there. Is there a crisis situation? Absolutely. Like, does the crisis need to be resolved and people need to be able to return to their homes and live in peace? That's what we want. But the solution is not creating the kind of crisis situations that the Dominican government has created over the past 3 years, such as removing people who worked in sugar plantations, issuing a decree that removed people who worked, those sugarcane workers who worked in sugarcane plantations, removing them off their property and deporting them. That was one thing that happened. Then we had this skirmish on the border around the canal. Do you remember that?
Yes, I was going to talk about that too.
So as a result of that escalated tension, the Dominican government immediately ceased all processing of student visas.
That's crazy. Traveler
visas, any migration paperwork that Haitians were doing in the Dominican Republic. That was taken as an excuse to stop processing and shut down the legal pathway to have documentation. So then it's like, well, now everyone's not legal because there's no legal pathway. You see what the trap is here?
So it's like any type of issue that happens in Haiti, I guess the DR government tries to find an excuse to expunge or what's the word I'm looking for?
Expel.
To send them back to DR. I mean, send them back to Haiti.
And the issue is that, again, going back to the 2013 denationalization sentence, now that's 12 years ago. So now you have a population that doesn't have papers, but they were born in DR. And if they had kids, their kids were born in DR. So you have this massive population, the issue was not resolved, of people who are technically undocumented in the country where they were born. So then you can say, well, look, all these undocumented people, we have to deport them. But they've been here.
As you're talking,
and there's no legal pathway for them to get documentation.
That's crazy. As you're talking, these are stuff that I've heard, right? Call it conspiracy, call it what you will. I'm just going to bring it to the platform now because you're very knowledgeable about this. Are these families, are these popular elite families in DR and elite families in Haiti, are they working together to destabilize Haiti? That's what I've heard. I've heard that, they're trying to get the gang violence that's happening in Haiti right now. It's part of the plot to get rid of as much Haitians as possible to rebuild, because they know what's underneath with the rich minerals that they have in Haiti. Like, what have you heard? Is there some truth to that? I don't know. I'm just bringing it to the platform now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And we should definitely talk about these things. So let's start with the fact that Dominican Republic's first and most major and significant trading partner is Haiti. Right? That is who we do trade with.
That's crazy.
And so there's a delicate balance here of just enough destabilization in Haiti that people will go to DR to work for very cheap or free, right? But not enough that it disrupts the trade.
Crazy.
There's a delicate kind of balance there when it comes to the situation. And so that's point number one. That actually the DR would benefit from a Haiti that's thriving and stable, because when there's increased wages and increased consumption, then who are they going to consume from? They might consume from Dominican Republic because that's the major trading partner that's bringing things in, right? But not enough that Haitians become self-sufficient completely, because then they're not going to need, right? Again, delicate
Haitian
balance
workers.
here.
Right.
There's a delicate balance here. And then the other part is that, yes, there is significant mineral wealth in the island of Haiti. And you know how I know that? Because that's what I did my PhD on. That's what I researched for my PhD. I researched the mining industry of Dominican Republic from colonial times to present day, and the impact that gold mining is having in the central mountains of Dominican Republic. The health impacts, the environmental impacts, the social disturbances, the violence, the militarization, the policing. I spent 2 years doing that research.
Wow.
People ask me, oh, what's your PhD on? That's what my PhD is on. Wow. Socio-environmental conflict and the environmental consequences of mining pollution. That's what my research is on, and my dissertation, God willing, will be available very soon. So that said, there is significant mineral wealth on both sides. And industries have been given free rein. The mining industry and exploration companies have been given free range to explore in the Dominican side. And that has been the case since the early 1970s, right? Because the first thing that the post-Trujillo new president did was open up the country to industry and court U.S. mining industries, mining corporations. So in Haiti, it has not been that free range, because there has been a very strong social movement, especially in the northern part of Haiti, to disrupt and ensure that mining doesn't take place, because the consequences are just too severe. We're talking about water pollution. We're talking about waste that has to be managed for hundreds of years. We're talking about killing crops and land that will never be able to produce again. So the consequences are severe, devastating, generational, and very harmful to humans, animals, plants, the whole thing. So there is some truth to the fact that we have the core group made up of Canada and the US.
Right.
Canada, it has a very, very strong mining industry. 80% of the world's mining corporations are headquartered in Toronto. And the Canadian government benefits when mining corporations make money because they tax them. So you have this intermingling of these core group countries, right? The businesses in those core group countries that are interested in something like mining, and the current political state of affairs, which Haitians, since 2018, we know this because of the Petrocaribe protests, have been saying, we need resources for Haitians, Haiti for Haitians.
Right.
We cannot continue with corruption and destabilization and leaders who are autocratic and decide that they're gonna just stay on, right?
Yeah, that's a big part of it too, the leaders.
Right, so it's like, it's a very complicated picture, but there is some truth to the fact that there's a push to be able to extract, right? That is part of the agenda.
That's
to
crazy.
Open up Haiti for extraction.
To rebuild a new Haiti in a sense, the way they see it.
The way that they see it, right? Rebuild Haiti maybe in the image of Dominican Republic, but the inequality in Dominican Republic is off the charts.
That's crazy.
So much so that Black Dominicans and working class people, everyday people, are fleeing through Puerto Rico, through Colombia, walking from Colombia all the way up to through the Darien Strait to arrive right at the US border. Like, that is a thing that's happening right now because of the level of inequality of this magical economy that keeps growing and growing and growing, 6% every year, but you don't have equity in the society.
Right. Wow. Have you been to Haiti?
I have.
I've been to Haiti one time. I stayed at a resort. I was there with my partner for a fashion show, 2016. Beautiful. I've also been to DR one time. I stayed in Punta Cana. Was staying at a resort. Beautiful. Hispaniola is beautiful, is what I'm trying to say, right? What would in your mind, what would a decolonized Hispaniola look like to you?
That's a really, really significant question. You should come to our conference this summer,
Okay.
July 12 and 13, so that we can have that in-depth conversation, right? I think that sometimes when people talk about decolonization, it's like this really big concept. And what decolonization at its core, it's a concept that comes out of indigenous communities, political communities here in the US, and it's returning the land back to the people, the indigenous people of that land, right? At its like, you can put it in so many fancy terms, it's about giving the land back to its people. The people who have been kicked off the land, forced to migrate, the people who were promised land reform, right, and access, and never got that. The people who were forced to sell their land to have to, sustain their families. Self-determination, right? So now we're getting into like, well, what does it mean for our island? Self-determination, right? It means that Haiti is not constantly, like the political processes of Haiti and its people are not constantly interrupted by another occupation, right? Whether that was, the first occupation, how far back do we want to go, right? Like to slavery. It's like there isn't another occupation on the horizon. There isn't another creative way, because now the creative way is hiring mercenaries to send drones. Right? There isn't another occupation. The global community doesn't intervene, and internally, the leadership changes to be more democratic, more feminist, right? Haiti was the first country in Latin America to have a female president. People don't know that, but I think it's kind of dope, So a more feminist leadership, a leadership that like understands the value of our island as a sacred, natural territory that needs to be preserved and defended for future generations. So, if we ever have children, I don't know if you have kids, they get to actually enjoy the paradise that is our island.
Right.
Right now, some communities don't even have access to their own beach.
It's wild. Yeah, it's wild.
So that's just the beginning, there's so much more that could be said, right? But those fundamental things are like...
It's tough. What gives you hope that, what's going on now will get better in the future with the systems of the violence and equality that's happening?
That's a great question. What gives me hope is knowing that we've already changed the game, right? I feel like before in culture, there was so much taboo around being a Dominican who also defended and was supportive of Haitians and Haiti and Haitian politics and Haitian culture. Like growing up, that was like really, really taboo. And I grew up in the DR actually, till I was 10. But even here in the US, there wasn't that conversation around our culture, our identity, and how connected it is. And doing this work over the past 7 years, I have been able to see the change in our community.
That's good.
The fact that we're able to even have this conversation on this platform like this, and think about what does unity mean? What does respecting each other's culture mean? Learning about each other's cultures, learning each other's languages, you know? Yeah. I just got a new Haitian neighbor in my neighborhood, and all I can say is, "Sac passe." I gotta learn some Creole, right?
No doubt.
So learning how to be respectful and supportive, right? And I also think that the burden is on Dominicans, because whether directly or indirectly, Dominicans have benefited from the fact that our country got built up through unpaid or low-paid Haitian work. Like, whether you like that or not, you can sit there and be like, well, I'm not privileged, but Dominican privilege is a real thing in this situation. We are the white people in this situation. And I don't mean white as in skin color, I mean white as in like where we're positioned socially in the situation. So whether people like it or not, there's a lot of work to do.
Right.
So I think that what gives me hope is that there are people actually now trying to do more of that work, more Dominicans, because that's the community that I'm trying to rally, right? I stand for both of our communities, but I'm responsibilizing Dominicans for doing the work to repair the anti-Blackness, the anti-Haitianism, and do the best that we can to change the relationship, right, to the best of our abilities. So the fact that, like, we have a community that's about to be 33,000 people that comes to our events, like, fills up our conference every single year, wants to do this work, is ready to be supportive of our projects. Like, we have a really wonderful mental health project in Port-au-Prince called La Kutanama, which is training folks to be healing circle facilitators to help their communities heal from the violence that's happening. I feel like all of that gives me hope. My team gives me hope that we are like one beautiful big family and we really care about each other, and we are like volunteers, like 7-8 years of volunteer labor, and they still show up, you know, ready to work. Like, hope is not something that's just gonna come to you and it's gonna land on your shoulder. Hope is a thing that you have to build up every single day. You go to the gym?
I do.
You work out?
I do.
Why do you work out?
To preserve and take care of myself.
Okay, so you know that you gotta build up your muscle, right? Hope is the same thing. It's not just a thing that's gonna fall out of the sky. You gotta take action, build up that muscle, and because of your actions, you see the results, and that gives you inspiration.
Powerful, powerful. What would you say to Dominicans who don't recognize their Blackness in a sense?
First of all, I would say that not every Dominican is Black, and I think we should like have that conversation.
Okay.
There's some Dominicans who are white, and like they come from generationally Spanish descendant families, and like it's okay to be like, I'm not someone who is mixed with like Taino and African. Like, there's some Dominicans who are white. I have somebody who self-identifies as white, as a white Dominican in my team, right? So that's an important thing, right? To like recognize that.
And how about the ones who
who disidentify, right? The right term
I think that's
is
what I was trying to say.
Disidentifying, right?
Okay.
I think that, you know, there are some people who will never identify as Black, right? So there's that. There's people who will never identify that way. And it's not about to be, like, Blackness is not to be forced on anybody. Blackness is amazing, right? Blackness is a global thing. Blackness as a diasporic thing, and all its different nuances. It's like, that's not something to force on people. Like, that's something to take up, right? To internalize, to love, and to protect. Because for the ones that, you know, do want to, who are in that journey to reclaim their roots, because the roots are there.
Yeah.
Like, our Blackness as Dominicans, our culture is so rich. Like, incredible history, rich history, like exciting.
Yep.
So for the ones that do want to claim that, it's about ensuring that it's not just about how you identify, but it's about your politics and your action, right? It's not enough to just say, I'm a Black Dominican. Okay, what does that mean? Like, who are you in solidarity with? Like, how are you working towards justice? How are you living up to the legacy of our ancestors? It's not just about a trend or a statement, you know?
Powerful. I got one question, and then I'm going to give you the floor with whatever you want to talk about.
Okay.
Because I know you got to get out of here, I got to get out of here soon. And we're just scratching the surface, by the way. What's one truth that you would wish everybody who hears this, you know, this conversation to take away from today's conversation? What's one truth?
Oh, man. Well, I got to return back to my anthropologist roots, right? Because that's important to me. Like, we are all human beings, worthy of the same rights and the same privileges and the same joys and the same resources.
Powerful. I had like 38 questions for her. I just had to slim it down. We're just scratching the surface. In cultured company, making impactful moves, creating conversations within the community, healing the community. There's a lot of wounds that need to be healed. I'm giving you the floor. What is there anything else that I probably left out that you would like to kind of make a point on? Because this interview is a powerful interview, and I want this to be shared with as many people as possible. And I'm going to push this on my platform as much as possible to get the word out.
I would say, like, for a Dominican, if you meet a Haitian person, right, just say "sac passe," and and just be friendly and kind, and start building like that. That bridge is not like something that's hard to do. It's all about how we treat each other. And on the other hand, there are certain demands that are unmet for our communities, both here in the US and also in Dominican Republic, right, and in Haiti. So take up the responsibility, right, because like no one's coming to save us, literally.
Right.
We are the generation that changes things, right? But we also have to lean on the people who came before us, the wisdom that they've shared, to like find that identity for yourself as someone who's a change maker, a freedom fighter, and also do it with joy, right? Like, that means still in this work because we just have so much fun. Like, we really do. You're gonna see it tonight because we're going to throw this party. Like, the work is not just meant to be struggle. It's like we get to actually enjoy and like build.
Right.
And come to our conference, July 12 and 13 in East Harlem.
No doubt. Dr. Garcia, this was an amazing interview. We're gonna do a part 2 for sure. I'm just scratching the surface. I had like 38, 40 questions. I just breezed through these questions. I commend you for the work that you're doing. Amazing work, freedom fighter. When we schedule these podcasts, there are still people we're scheduling for 3-4 years that we still can't get on. I reached out to you in 2-3 days, you're here, and we're having this conversation. So
it's important.
I know you're busy, but I just want to thank you for making this happen. You know, I really appreciate you, and you know, just stay tuned for more because we're gonna work together.
I love it.
You know, we're gonna work together. So, guys, if you like this episode, definitely comment, definitely share this with people. Powerful, educational episode today. And definitely subscribe to the channel, you know, and check out what Dr. Garcia has going on in inculturedcompany.org.
Yes, www.inculturedco.org.
Incultured Co.
There you can find our Take Action for Haiti toolkit. You can find our resource page, which is full of so many amazing resources about everything we talked about today. You can find our some of our videos as well, because we've done so many educational videos that are free for the community. And you can also find our donation page, because we are a volunteer org. Nobody gets paid around here. And the best way to support us is to become a monthly donor with as little as $5. That helps us have, you know, events. It helps us be able to keep this thing going.
No doubt. And I want to do a special shout out to my wife's cousin, Sabine, who's Haitian, married an awesome Dominican brother, Jose, who have a beautiful daughter, Amaya. Hi, Amaya. Hi, Sabine. Hi, Jose. She's got the best of both worlds.
I know. Love it.
So I just wanted to shout them out. Beautiful couple. So check this episode out. If you like it, comment, share, subscribe. Till then, Team Sac Passe, we out.